Do the owners really want to sell? That question gets asked in frustration so often. But today we're going to reveal it's usually nothing to do with the owners, it's the agents. And we'll explain why we've been criticised for being the first real estate agents in history to be too honest. This is Honesty, Trolls and the American Escape, Why Valencia Works. Welcome back to the Valencia Property Podcast. So as I was saying, welcome back to the Valencia Property Podcast. I'm Graham, and this month we're pulling the curtain back on how Valencia's property market really works, warts and all. We've had quite the month. We've been trolled by a xenophobic Frenchman living in Valencia who thinks we're destroying the market by being too honest about properties. We've watched American inquiries surge again as people realise their personal last straw has arrived. And we're going to explain why importing your home country's mindset is the biggest mistake you can make when moving to Spain. Plus, we'll share some properties that actually tick all of the boxes, answer some voice notes, and I'll reveal which massive agency is charging 5 to 6% commission while still demanding more from buyers' agents, and that is buyers as well. Yeah, I'm naming names today. Well, sort of. So the first part of today's podcast is all about the rules for listing, why we don't list most properties. And after 26 years in Valencia Property, we've developed what you might call a filter. And it's pretty strict. Let me tell you what automatically disqualifies a property from our listings in almost 100% of the cases. So we'll call it the death list if you like. Main roads. First floor on a heavily trafficked road? Nah, it's generally rubbish. Triple glazing is great, but you move to Valencia to have the windows open, nice climate and that, not to seal yourself in against diesel fumes from the local bus stop, or smells from the local bin. Darkness. All the lights on in the photos? That's your red flag right there. Interior caves on narrow streets. Doesn't matter how cheap they are. Optimistic pricing. Developers wanting 250,000 more for a modernisation you could do yourself for maybe 100,000, maybe 120,000. Let those properties rot through the long hot summer and into the winter if it ever comes. Money and B. They want 300k for the property, but only 200k on the deeds? Don't do it. I'll explain why over a coffee, but the answer involves jail time and massive fines, so you probably won't want to do it. We have a style guide for stuff we do list. We call it the wink and the hook. We list what we consider worth listing and we write for ourselves and for our audience. Last month somebody messaged worried we'd been hacked because we quoted James Joyce, the bit about the sea being like scrotum and snot. We didn't need to do that, but you know what? We can. They just didn't get what we do. We had 80s and 90s song references throughout last week's article on the blog. Life's what you make it, money for nothing, I believe in a thing called love. Did you spot them? The point is, property descriptions, just like articles and podcasts, indeed, like this, don't have to be boring. Being boring, that's another 80s reference, by the way, is a 2-bedroom apartment is available for purchase. The unit includes 2 bedrooms. So you almost switched off then, didn't you? But we don't do that. Our differentiator is we're not afraid to quote Kafka, criticise the Fantafiura, or keep banging on about the self-harm that was Brexit. That's our filter, and it's also fun. Those who don't get it don't come to us. We're quite happy with that. The next section is a troll story. Now, it's not that awful film called Trolls, or Trolls 2, and I think there was a Trolls 3 and maybe an Trolls 4, but the troll story and agent greed, when honesty goes too far, apparently. So, we have this troll on Facebook. It's always Facebook, isn't it? They've made it their mission to destroy our business, their quote, because we were too honest about a property. They circled a bit in green, very badly I might add, saying we'd gone too far. What did we say? That no local would or could buy the property. Now, as I explained in the article about why we listed it, it's because of you, dear listener or reader of our stuff. You get it, and we did it to direct people maybe to other stuff we have on the site. It's just to show what is available, the sort of thing we do not list normally. But us saying in it, don't buy it, that's honesty. Anyway, the kicker about this person's profile is gold. To a question about the Cabañal, great to live with gypsies, they said. About Chirivella, a third world village. And my favourite, on someone's motivational post, and I really hate motivational posts too, but they said, Down syndrome ninja is back, how inspiring. When told to stop insulting people, they replied, what insult? They genuinely didn't understand, or chose not to understand. But here's the real irony. This troll is French, living in Valencia, complaining about foreigners destroying the market, while trolling all foreigners who dare to want to live here too. It's not quite ironic in the Alanis Morissette encyclopedia, but it's close. Let's get on to the real problem, because it's not us. It's agent greed. I wrote a post on the Substack. The link is in the show notes, like normal. Remember, go to the show notes after this, you'll see lots and lots of links. The one thing I'll never understand, it was called, and it is about why agents representing owners don't market to the greatest number of buyers possible. This week, a large company, who shall remain nameless, but let's say they charge 5 to 6% commission, asked for 2% from our client on top. That's always the case with our collaborations, they said. No, it isn't. 5 days earlier, different agent, same company, they asked for 1%. Still too much when they're already getting their succulent commission. Another thing, visits only on November the 18th. The agent's on the other side of Spain and only wants to come that day. We can't give you photos. The owners wouldn't want that. Really? I thought owners wanted to sell. Isn't the idea of being a real estate agent to get the property out to the most potential clients to actually serve the seller? Maybe I've got things wrong. Our next section is called The American Surge and the Spanish Reality. Your last straw and the matrix you're leaving. Valencia in 2025 isn't selling a dream. It's offering a reality. And Americans are getting it because that reality is a bit better than what they've got in America. We expect the absolute shitstorm that will embrace the USA as tariffs hit, the clown show continues, and the corrosive influence of the illegal immigrant South African emerald mine inheriting Nepo baby with the $1 trillion wage packet ruins the US economy, to have a double-edged sword effect. But there's one big mistake everyone makes. People think buying through a company structure makes sense because it works in their country. Doesn't work like that in Spain. And it's this cultural baggage, i.e. it works in America so it will work here, that causes problems. Other cultural baggage that you need to forget here. Because these are changes that you'll see when you get here. 1, you don't need a gun. Nobody has one. You can walk the streets at night. You're safe. 2, you get ill? See a doctor. No payment. Have an accident? The ambulance ride will not bankrupt you. Want a holiday? You have a right to 30 calendar days a year for a holiday in Spain. Your boss is a jerk? They can't just fire you on a whim in Spain. Now, for the majority of our clients, that's not relevant. They're not coming here to work for a Spanish boss. But it's something to bear in mind for your children, for example, when they start work. Because if they start work over here, you can't just be sacked for a stupid reason. But what about freedom, I hear you shout? In the US, we have real freedom. Well, if your freedom means being locked in a car because there's no walkable neighbourhoods, answering emails on weekends under threat of being terminated, or flexing about doing 18-hour days while your partner seeks a divorce, maybe your freedom is within a self-constructed prison? Spain isn't perfect, but if you want to spend your fourscore years and 10 more contentedly, you could do worse than choosing a country where things that matter still have importance. We asked for some questions this month. We've had some brilliant voice notes, questions about everything from contract law to inventories and integration. I asked for voice notes, I got them in spades. So I'm not answering all of them on this episode, I'll answer some in the next one. But here are some of them and the answers.
I'll start with the easy question.
Hi, Graham. Thanks for the opportunity of asking a question. Here's one for you. In Belgium, we can set up rental agreements with annual rent indexation, which is based on the annual cost of living index. Is it possible to do something similar in Spain? Thanks.
So the answer is yes, you can. And most contracts, when you do a year, they've got 4 more years on the contract. And standard practice is there is a clause which says that the rental will be increased by the IRPF each year, which is the inflation rate. Now, that's normal. But when the inflation rate went really high a couple of years ago, the government put in place a thing that the maximum you could increase by was 2%. And I think for this year, it was 3% is the maximum you could increase. But that's currently in place. So for example, if you had a property and you're renting it for 1,000, at the end of the year, it will go up to 1,030 this year because it's 3%. Right. Some people don't apply it because they're quite happy with their client, with their tenants, and they just let them stay there at the original price. But you should apply it because if further down the line in 3-4 years' time you start having a problem with the tenant, you can't just raise it by what you haven't raised it in the previous years. But it's a standard clause within a contract, and most people are happy to sign it.
And the next question.
Hey Graham, my wife and I are renting an apartment in Ciutat Vella with the intent of buying a place in a year or two. We followed the news about housing shortages around Spain, but passed so many vacant buildings. Why are there so many vacant and deteriorating buildings in great locations, and how do we go about getting them sold and occupied? Love the podcast, thanks so much.
So this is an interesting question. Why are there so many vacant buildings? I've written a post about this in the past, actually. It's a lot to do with inheritance and family feuds. And it's also to do with the cost of actually inheriting in certain cases. So what happens is typically Spanish families are quite big, and the form of inheritance works here is that the surviving partner gets 50%, and then the children get 50% between them along with the surviving partner. For example, if there are 3 children, then the surviving partner gets 50%, and then the surviving partner and the 3 children get 12.5% each, adding up to 100%. So the surviving partner has 62.5% and is allowed to live there, right? Now, over the years, the surviving partner falls out with one of the kids, or one of the kids falls out with their 2 siblings, etc., etc. And when they come to inherit and then sell, they inherit the 62.5%, leaving them all with about 33% in the end. The problem is all of them have got to want to sell, and if they've fallen out, that often doesn't happen. Equally, someone might have moved away and they're saying, well, I'm not going to deal with this, so we'll need to get a power of attorney. And sometimes they don't even bother to do the inheritance because they think they're going to have to pay inheritance tax, which in a lot of cases they won't. And it can't be sold until the owners are the inheritors. It might still be in the previous person's name. So that's one case. Secondly, people are just sitting on properties because prices are going up. If you can put your money in a bank and get 2% a year if you're lucky, why would you do that if you can keep it in a property when prices are going up between 10 and 20% a year? Now, of course, the merry-go-round eventually stops and the prices stop going up, but people always think they're going to hit the top of the market and then sell. And they're always wrong, of course. But it means that people are not interested in selling because it's a form of saving, which is an interesting way of looking at it. And the other one is they've got a property which they would love to do something with, but they haven't got the funds to be able to actually do it up, and they're saving towards that end. And sometimes, therefore, a property is sitting there just crumbling, and at the moment, the owners aren't able to get the money together in order to do anything with it, or haven't got the inclination or the time or whatever. So it sits there, not on the market, not lived in, looking empty and looking worse every year. And yet it is every year. It's not a thing they do for 3 months and then decide, oh, we'll sell it now. They just keep hold. Spanish people invest in property. They don't invest in shares in general. They don't invest in crypto in general, although some of the younger people might. But really, people in Spain, they get a bit of extra money and they buy another property and then they'll rent it out or not rent it out, because when prices are rising, they just get more value in that property. So I hope that helps. Unfortunately, it doesn't bring many more properties onto the market. There could be a government initiative coming that if your property is empty, you pay extra tax on it, and that may bring more properties to market, but you can't be sure.
I bought a property 3 years ago with Valencia Properties, and I want to have my parents come here too. They currently live in Florida, and they want to flee the orange monster. They're hung up, though, on the fact that instead of being able to get about $300,000 or $400,000 of profit on their house that they could have gotten 2 or 3 years ago, now they'd only get $140,000. They seem to think they can get more if they wait. However, they really need some extra help around the house, and that's quite expensive in the United States. And they're probably much more affordable here, but I'm not really aware of those details. Also, they're worried about pre-existing conditions for health insurance, and that could be really expensive too. Also, they're also worried. They also have dogs, and they want to make sure there's grass around, but they also need public transportation because they don't want to drive. And that seems to be a little bit hard to find a area with grass and not the most expensive areas of Valencia or the outskirts with a metro stop nearby, metro or tram stop nearby. So these things together kind of overwhelm them, and I'm kind of looking for some advice about how to convince them to go ahead and make the move.
Okay, this is a difficult one because it involves parents, and obviously I don't know their personal situation, but let's assume, for example, they are retirement age, because that makes it easier with the health insurance question later. But to start off with, they want to flee the orange monster, just like so many other people do. And one thing I'd say is they shouldn't just be fleeing, they should be coming to something. And Valencia's lifestyle and quality of life is really good. Now, as regards getting money out from the sale of their property, they might have been able to get 300, 400,000 out of it from a sale a few years ago. It's now 140. In 2 years' time, it might be zero. I don't see prices rising in the States with the current situation because the demand is dropping off because foreigners don't want to go there. And the life is getting more expensive. Quality of life is getting worse, and cost of living is getting more expensive because of the stupid tariffs that the orange idiot is putting in place. So, there might be a point where they just say, yeah, let's do it. But if they leave it too long, that 130, 140,000 could become less. Now, as regards the cost of living, it's massively cheaper here than it is in the States. And the first thing is the health insurance, as we mentioned before. I actually phoned up an insurance agent just before this to find out people coming with pre-existing conditions and how much they'd have to pay. And it might be between 100 and 300 euros per month a person with pre-existing conditions for them to be covered for a year. The second year, if they're here on the non-lucrative visa, they can buy into what's called the Convenio Especial, the special agreement with foreigners who come in, and you can buy into the state health system. I think I could get this wrong. I think it's 257 per month or something like that. Off the top of my head, I can't get it. I will find out the information for you the next time I get in touch. But 257 a month to be covered by the state health insurance. You can only do that after you've been here a year on the non-lucrative visa.
Talking about home help here, the minimum wage in Spain is about 1,100, 1,200 euros now, and you can get a home help 40 hours a week for that price. You might want to pay them more.
if you really want your parents to have some good help at home. For that, there'll be a maid, they'll cook, etc. A lot of these people are coming from Colombia, Ecuador, South America in general, and doing these jobs of home helps. Lots of older Spanish people have a live-in home help. If they're living in, you pay them less because you're giving them a home as well. So it's possible. But if you want to have a good choice of people, give them above minimum wage. Doesn't have to be massively above minimum wage, but give them above minimum wage because they're doing an important job. And it's be much, much cheaper than putting them into a residential home or doing anything in America. It's going to be much, much cheaper here. Next thing, well, the dogs. There's plenty of green space in and around Valencia. Now, as you say, there are more expensive areas that border the riverbed in Valencia where you find the green spaces, but there are other areas with plenty of green spaces that aren't in the more expensive areas. For example, if you go to Mislata, which is right on the edge of the city, then there's a park, the Parque de la Cabecera, and another one, the Canaleta, behind, which are huge parks and got plenty of dogs running around there with their owners. You've just got to be careful about when you go around with them. If it's a dangerous dog, they've got to wear a muzzle. If it isn't, they've got to be on a lead. Yeah. So they're on a lead until they get to the dog parks themselves and they can be let off the lead there and play with the other dogs. There are plenty of parks specifically set up for dogs around. But yeah, there are certain areas of the city where you might be further away from the riverbed, further away from the parks. Once you go out of the city, then all the towns have got their own dog parks. They've got their own areas. You go into the orange groves, walk around the orange groves and everything with your dog. You don't have a problem. There are more dogs in Spain than children because it's so easy to own a dog here and to look after the dog in a certain way. So don't worry about that when you're outside the city. And if they bought, for example, a place near a metro station, but a house near a metro station, they'd have their own garden for the dog anyway. So it's a thing to think about. The prices are affordable compared with Florida. So the lifestyle will be cheaper, the cost of living will be cheaper, the amount they have to spend to buy a place will be cheaper, and public transport is extremely cheap, especially for pensioners.
Hi Graham, can you answer a question in relation to partially furnished or furnished properties? Is there an itemized list that should have been with a contract or at the time of settlement or pre-settlement inspection?
So this is an interesting answer, or rather it's an interesting question. I hope the answer is interesting as well. So do we get inventories when you actually sign the deposit contract? And the answer is yes and no, of course. In the answer, of course, like everything in Spain, is it depends. So if you are told that the property comes furnished, then what we do at that point is we take an inventory. If you are told that the property doesn't come furnished, then we don't. And I think your property fell into one of the things between those two things, that the owners said they were going to leave some things. So we expected them to leave some stuff, but they weren't obliged to leave some stuff. And they left very little in the end. In fact, they took more away than they probably should have done. But at the same time, they left some things. Now, if you are ever in any doubt about it when you're buying a place, you say, does it come furnished? No. What are you leaving? And then make an inventory of it. But when it says don't come furnished, expect it totally empty. We had a place a few years ago in La Liana where they left 2 light bulbs, nothing else. 1 light bulb was in the kitchen and 1 light bulb was in the hall, so you could see where you were going when you got into the property. They left nothing else. It was said the property was going to be unfurnished, so we sort of expect it, but we don't expect everyone to take all the light bulbs, but it sometimes happens. But you don't put things like that in inventory. What you're looking at is, are the white goods staying in the kitchen, for example, and then put them down. And then we take a photo inventory in general. Take photos, make sure they don't swap out a new fridge for an old fridge or a new washing machine for an old washing machine and things like that. And people sign that with the deposit contract.
Hi, Graham. It was great meeting you in Valencia. Thanks again for the warm welcome and all the insights. I've been diving into your site and podcast, and I'd love to contribute a few questions for an upcoming segment. I'm an American with EU citizenship, fluent in Spanish, and planning to relocate to Valencia in 3 to 5 years. I have friends who are in process of moving to Valencia now, so have some local connections. I'm currently exploring buying a property to rent out and use for visits until I move full-time. Here are a few questions I would love your take on. What areas of Valencia, both in the city and the suburbs, offer good rental potential, but also work well for occasional personal stays?
So there are a few questions here. The first one, what areas of Valencia are good for rental potential and also for occasional stays? Well, really that depends on you because there are two things there. Where do you want to be and where rents out? And they are two separate answers because where do you want to be can be anywhere. You might decide that a certain area is better for you, and then you rent your property out, and it doesn't really matter where it is because everything rents. Whether inside or outside of the city, everything rents. In my town, for example, Ibona, there is literally nothing for rent at a decent price at the moment. So if you put your place on at a decent price, it will rent. Liliana, more or less the same. Petra, more or less the same. In the city, more or less wherever you buy, you'll be able to rent it out. Now, the rentals we are talking about, of course, are the 3-month rentals through our sister company, Stepping Stone Rentals, which are for people who are coming over perhaps on the Schengen visa for 90 days and need somewhere to be rather than paying excessive amounts for an Airbnb or paying for a year when they're only going to be there for 3 months. So that type of rental is very good, especially if you want to use the place yourself a few times a year or a couple of times a year, and you're going to come in, say, for Fallas in March, and then you're going to come back for a bit in the summer. We can fill that gap with Stepping Stone Rentals. If you want to do a long-term rental until you come over in 3-5 years time, that can also be done too.
P.S. I'm a runner, so access to safe roads, areas to run are a bonus. Really green space.
And the next part of that was you are a runner. So anywhere near the riverbed in Valencia is a good option. And as the riverbed sort of snakes around the city, you're never too far away from that part in any part of the city. So that's good. Outside the city, wherever you go, the towns are relatively small, maximum size about 25, 26,000. You run 5 minutes in any direction and you're going to be outside the town and into the orange fields, more or less.
What's the best way to approach buying from abroad, especially if I want to use the property occasionally before relocating?
Are you buying from abroad? If you are here now and you make a decision and you're buying it, we make sure that there's power of attorney in place, not only for applying for your NIA number, but also for actually buying in case you can't come back on the dates when the sale will be. We make sure it's a general power of attorney, either through a lawyer who we work with or through us, for example, if you feel you trust us or if you feel you trust your lawyer. You don't need to make any special arrangements about buying from abroad compared with buying here, but you will need to do our morning orientation thing when we do opening of the bank account, getting of the power of attorney, meeting the lawyer, opening your currency account with the currency company that we work with, etc. If you want to get a mortgage, also speaking to the brokers in order to be able to get your mortgage pre-arranged before you buy. So basically, it's one morning where we do all of that and give you the introductions to everyone you need to know. And after that, then you can start looking for the property. If you don't find one when you are here, because we already know what you're looking for, you're in our mind. And then when something comes up, we can do a video call from that property or whatever, or we can wait till the next time you come, whichever you want, really.
As an EU citizen living outside the EU, are there any quirks I should know about when registering residency or accessing healthcare later?
And really, the answer is no. As an EU citizen, when you come to live here, you just have to register and you've got the right to healthcare, you've got the right to other things. If you did not have that EU residency, then you'd be looking for private healthcare, which we suggest you might want to get as an EU citizen as well, because it's so affordable here.
Do you have any tips for making local connections beyond the expat bubble, especially when language isn't a barrier?
Go out, speak to people, become very open-minded about what you're going to do, clubs you're going to go to, places you're going to visit, who you're going to go with, etc., etc. Go to meetups. There are plenty of meetups here in Valencia. There are plenty of Facebook groups organizing things. You can go to join a choir if you want, any sort of thing like that. Do what you want with your interests and you will find your people.
And finally, if you were in my shoes, what would you start doing now to make the move smoother later? Thanks again, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
You're doing the right thing. You're doing your investigation before, you're talking with us, we're getting everything in place and ready for when you are ready to buy. Because when you're ready to buy, if something's good, it's going to go quickly, so you have to have everything ready in place. you're already doing that, so there's no problem. Keep your eye on the market, keep in touch with us, make sure we are in the forefront of your mind, or vice versa. You are in the forefront of our mind when we're thinking about properties that come onto the market and say, yeah, that one could be good for you.
Before finishing though, let me remind you of one thing. We always say there are no such thing as stupid questions, even though at times there are, and we answer them all. Because if you're asking, others are wondering the same thing. They might just not be brave enough to ask. You can send your voice notes to me on WhatsApp or via mail, and maybe your question will be answered here in the next episode. And honestly, your question will probably be answered in the next episode. And next, we're talking about properties. We've taken a selection of our properties from this month, and let's talk about properties that actually work, unlike the overpriced disaster our French friend was talking about, for example. We have had some great listings come up in the last couple of weeks at various price points. For example, the Cabañal Classic at $399,000. Sometimes you see a property and you know it just ticks all the boxes. 3rd floor with lift, central Cabañal near the beach and marina, excellently modernised, fully furnished, ready to move in right away, right near the metro, 2 bedrooms plus a large dressing room that was a 3rd bedroom, blah, 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 blah. But here's what you're really buying. The lifestyle. Morning strolls along the promenade, hipster cafe breakfasts, roller skating around the marina, checking out startup culture at La Lanzadera, the Cabañal market with gorgeous fresh food. It's not a dream. It's the Valencian lifestyle for many. The next property. And of course, before we go any further, yes, you can find the links to these properties in the show notes if they haven't been sold and already disappeared off the site. The Ace Ventura. Now, this one's special, and if you read our site, you know our descriptions can get creative. This is the one where Paul really went to town on Jim Carrey, movies and puns. Head on over to the listing in the show notes to take a look, even if you haven't got $730,000 burning a hole in your pocket. The next one, you don't need $730,000. It's the Cabañal project. For those of you who wants to create something special, a project in the Cabañal. And yes, it's a blank canvas because you need to do everything. 3rd floor walk up, but just 300 meters from the marina, 400 meters from the beach. It's well worth looking at. $217,000 is a decent price in the current market for something like this in the Cabañal. And finally, something for people with deeper pockets. The luxury villa in Rochefort for the more discerning, and as I said, with much, much deeper pockets. It's a great option and location near to Cambridge House International School and just a 10-minute drive into the city. This is football player central. This is extremely rich people who put some money into Bitcoin 10 years ago. This is where they live. Just before we go, for those of you looking for your landing pad in Valencia, make sure to head over to Stepping Stone Rentals, our sister company, to see the latest listings. Also on the blog page, we've started writing about issues that affect renters here too. You can find both the SSR homepage and the blog by heading over to the links where? In the show notes. And that is November sorted. Quick reminder, buying beats renting in Valencia right now, but renting for 3 months while you look for that place to buy can work perfectly. That's why we set up Stepping Stone Rentals. For those who can buy, it's as close as you can get to paradise. Low mortgage rates, low property prices compared with many other places. We're not going to say it's affordable for everyone, but it's affordable for people wanting to go to Madrid. You'll get double the value here. Wanting to go to Barcelona, you'll get double the value. Going to Paris, London, places in the United States, you'll get double the value here. Equally, once you get here, the cost of living is so much less than in all of those other scenarios. If you want the full story on any of this, check out our blog at valencia-property.com/new, our Substack for the philosophical musings and some rants every now and again. And remember, we're booking consultation calls into December right now and even have some lined up for January. And to our French troll, thanks for the content. To everyone else wondering if we really are too honest, yes we are. That's the point. That's what we do. Until next month, this is Graham reminding you that, newsflash, Asking for the impossible doesn't create properties, but being honest about what's out there, that's what we do. Venga, hasta luego, hasta la próxima. Speak to you next month. Psst, I forgot one thing. What was the agency that takes a 5 to 6% commission from a seller and then wants more money? Well, just send me an email to information@valencia-property.com or send me a WhatsApp to 0034 657 994311. You might get the answer. See you next time.